Welcome, Battle Angels, to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Weekly Album Club. Hope you're doing well. I'm one of your hosts, Marty. Good to see you. Hope you're all doing great. And it's good to be here with my brothers again. Jim, what's been going on with you?
Oh, not much. Excited about tonight's pick. And here's what I've been spinning here lately. I've been doing some deeper cut Motorhead albums, like rock and roll. A lot of people, I guess don't like this one. I don't know why. This album's great, man. Traitor, The Wolf, Dogs, rock and roll, the title track, Eat the Rich. I mean, this is a great record, dude. So I really love it. I always have. I think it's awesome. And Also, Bastards. This is a really good one from their latter era, man. If you haven't heard Burner, the second track off this is one of the heaviest songs Motorhead's ever done. It's got
great song,
killer drums by Mickey D on it, killer riff, it's awesome. And then Born to Raise Hell is just it's an anthemic Motorhead's track. You can sing along with it. It's awesome. So both of these records, great. I really love both of these. And also for something very different, though similar in font, Infernal Majesty, nice. None Shall Defy. Man, what a great record this is.
It's a great record.
It really is, man. I don't know if Trey was listening to them when he was writing Abominations of Desolation, or if Kenny Hallman and Steve Terror were listening to Trey, but there's some definitely riff similarities between those two bands, the early era, and I just love that. I love not knowing who was listening to who, but I definitely think they were. And I mean the riffs are just fantastic on this thing, man, and vocals. So yeah, great stuff. That's what I've been spinning, and looking forward to discussion tonight.
Right on. Kellen, good to see you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. I feeling a little bit under the weather, but excited. I officially have booked my reservations for Traverse City, so
cool.
I will be there, and that's in the books. So spinning this week on Saturday, I believe. Our good friend Rick over at the Dreadful Minutes is hosting his annual 420 celebration. Yes.
Yep.
I mean, it is, I think it's third or fourth year going strong. So shout out to Rick. Anyway, he's got me a little bit more, he wins. I don't have tons of stoner records, but I did pull out some closest things in my collection to kind of get in the mood for the 420 stream. So first one I have here is, this is Grand Magus with nice. Iron Will.
Great record.
I think Rise Above for me is a record label that I sort of associate in the, middle ground between stoner and doom that I can get behind. So I really like this band, and this is probably my favorite record by them. Last year, this is the latest Slowmatics record. So for anyone who may be unfamiliar, they're playing a similar style, super heavy stuff. I believe they're from Scotland or Ireland. Excuse me. But that was probably within the genre my favorite record in 2023 that came out. And man, I was reflecting on back when I used to smoke, records that I love to smoke too, that, hey, screw it. It's album club. We can pull out whatever. Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill.
Nice. Nice.
Fuck, man. I don't want to do your dirty work no more. I love this record. This is such a fun, summer, hot weather, chill, lay back kind of record, and nothing but good vibes on this one. So shout out to Rick, and I'll be tuning in on Saturday to watch him.
Right on. And Oscar Award nominee TJ Hey, look, his camera is actually in the right landscape position. Well done. Yay.
Well,
You
I had
did
to
it.
utilize other equipment for the for that little adventure, and so yeah, I'm pretty tuckered out on the heels of my Oscar-winning performance, and
Yes.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, so I didn't get an app today, so if I act like I don't care, it's because I don't. And so this week I was listening to Colored Sands, Gorguts. You know, the early stuff. Yeah, the early stuff is so great, but I love what Luke did with this band and where they turn, and I just dig this shit so much. And then Dark Angel, Time Does Not Heal.
Yeah.
I just absolutely got to see these guys live at Death Fest in Baltimore, and they were so good. They just absolutely crushed. And then I don't have them, but I listening to this record, shame on me that Warrel Dane had passed away. Rest in peace. And so I went back and I was listening to the last two Nevermore records, which I just absolutely I think are just spectacular. So I was listening to that a bunch this week as well. So Dead Heart in a Dead World and This Godless Endeavor. Kind of conflicted on which one I like better. Really, they've got high points and low points for me, but there's just so much killer shit on there. And
yeah, they're both great.
Yeah.
I agree, TJ. I love both of those. Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
So
All right. Well, yeah, we did a Borknagar stream last week and got me spinning around this album again, the ICES Vortex Storm Seeker solo album. And I love this record. I always have. I think Vortex's vocals are some of the best in metal. I mean, his grim vocals are great. His clean singing is, I love his atypical way of phrasing and how he playfully takes it into higher registers. And he does things different than most vocalists do in this modern age. And I really, really like it. And I've also been spinning the new Borknagar a lot. That album really, if I had spent more time or had a copy of it going into the ranking, it probably would have ranked higher. It's a really good record, especially the lead off track. I can't remember the name of it. It starts with an S. Wow. Mind blowing song. Great emotive singing. Really, really, really enjoy that band. So yeah, go check that out. We had a pretty good time with Jimmy from Future Ruins and Melanie Loves Death Metal. It was a good time, good chat on a band you don't see talked about on YouTube very much. I haven't noticed anyway, but tonight we are here to discuss this album, Refuge Denied by Sanctuary. I got this for $4 somewhere.
I hate you.
Yeah, this is back before people gave a shit about vinyl. You know, it's in great shape too. But the debut album by Sanctuary. Quick overview for those of you who don't know. Sanctuary is an American heavy metal band formed in 1985 in Seattle, Washington. They were broken up from 1992 to 2010. He gives the current list of who's in the band, where we're not going to talk about. The lead vocalist position was held by Warrel Dane until his death in 2017. They have released 4 studio albums and 1 live EP. Despite never reaching mainstream success, Sanctuary is often credited for popularizing the 1980s and early 90s Seattle hard rock and heavy metal scene, which spawned bands such as Mother Love Bone, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Queensryche, Metal Church, Fifth Angel, TKO, Culprit, Rail, Forced Entry, and Q5. So yeah, we're talking about their debut album. They put out a couple demos. Let me see here. They put out the self-titled Sanctuary demo in 86, Refuge Denied promo in 87, which led to Refuge Denied in 1988, which came out on Epic Records and was produced by Dave Mustaine. I don't know how much producing he did, but this came out a year after Peace Sells. And I think you can tell sonically a little bit if you compare the two records. But anyway, we'll get into that here in a minute. So let's talk about first impressions of the artwork and the album. Kellen, we'll start with you. You're muted.
Sorry, the artwork for me is one that you kind of immediately recognize. Just the stylistically, that's a Repka piece.
Repka piece.
Colors, shading, lighting, everything to that looks very Repka. So it's a classic cover. I'm a little bit, I don't know if it's just overexposure, but I kind of feel like I'm burnt out on the style. It's classic, but I'm like, I kind of know what I'm getting, and to sort of come back to it this time, it felt like, sure, it's an iconic piece from an iconic era, but I just am not thrilled with it, or doesn't get me excited.
Put down the crack pipe, Kellen.
Yeah.
Well, I have even more things to say about it. Don't worry. Pass the crack pipe here when it's my turn.
You need to send me that record, you poser.
I like the record. I don't like the art. Anyway.
But so Sanctuary for me is a band that like is an example where you probably had heard of, the band that follows, and then someone asks you, have you heard of the band that preceded it, right? Like you've heard King Diamond, have you heard Merciful Fate sort of deal. So I had heard of Nevermore initially and got on to Sanctuary later, but they always fell in an interesting spot for me because it's on the tail end of sort of the American power metal thing, where thrash is coming to take greater influence over the genre. It's becoming a little bit heavier as what power metal means starts to creep into the European scene at this time. So I always kind of thought they straddled an interesting line. And I'm not surprised that this is a band that speaks to Jim, because they also remind me a little bit of the qualities that Metal Church rides, meaning it's sort of somewhere between thrash and American power metal. So I know how much Jim was on a kick for Metal Church earlier this year, and so I wasn't surprised. Kind of this definitely seems like in the wheelhouse that he speaks to, and is a band that I think you can use a lot of the same sort of adjectives to describe in terms of their songwriting and sonically what's going on. So yeah, my first impression there.
TJ.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the cover goes, I mean, this is another band that I've seen this record on the shelves since forever, and it was another band I just never paid any attention to back in the day. And I honestly, back in '87, I don't know that I would have really cared about this band all that much. It's just where I was at the time. I was so wrapped up in listening to Blood Feast and Possessed, and it's just kind of what was going on. But as far as the artwork goes, I mean, it's such a recognizable cover. I mean, as soon as Jim held it up, I was like, oh, okay, but it compared to some of the other stuff that What's His Face has done, I mean, I don't know. It's a cool cover. It's a little sparse for what it is, but I still think it has a pretty good image and stuff on it. He's got the main focal point of the art kind of in the center, which is usually a no-no with that kind of stuff, but it's still a pretty cool piece. And the logo is super cool. I mean, it's super kind of, it's just a cool logo, I think, for the time and stuff. But yeah, as far as, my first, I mean, I'm glad it's cool. Jim picked this. It's cool he picked this. I've never listened to this record. I vaguely recall that Warrel Dane was in this band. And I will, I'll say right off the top that I definitely like his stuff in Nevermore better than this. But it's cool that I got a chance to hear this. Back in the day, I don't know that I would have cared about this so much. I definitely did enjoy listening to it this week. I do have a few little things here and there to say about it, whatever, but overall, my first impression is about what I expected it to be, more or less. I guess maybe I thought it would be a little more thrashy than it is, it's a
Has
little bit
brief
more
moments for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and like to Kellen's point about Metal Church and stuff, it's like I'm, definitely that you say it, it's like, yeah, I'm picking up on that for sure. So I get that for sure. But there are points in here and there where they touch the thrash button a little bit, but it's but you know, yeah, I was definitely cool. My first, you know, it's my first impression is yeah, it's good, it's cool.
All right. Well, I'm trying to think back when I heard this for the first time 1,000 years ago, and I think my first impression was, in fact, I wrote it down. If Armored Saint had bloody fangs, is kind of what this reminds me of. And I don't hate Armored Saint. I know I've had disparaging things to say about Armored Saint. I don't like them as much as everybody does. I get it. I think they're a good band, but you know, you put Armored Saint on one end and Metal Church on the other. I think Sanctuary is a bit in the middle. But yeah, artwork first and foremost. I'm not a Repka fan. I like some of his stuff. The thing that's cool about this artwork is the fact that it isn't, you know, a central figure here and then the background a couple little ones, like Leprosy. If you look at the Leprosy aesthetic, he uses that a lot, and he's very busy. He's a very busy artist. He's still doing all these Brazilian pizza thrash bands, and all the covers he's doing has that central figure in the front. Guys, it's kind of over with. And I do think this is a bit sparse, but you know, it's an iconic cover. I don't hate it. I think it's, for him, I like it a bit better. It's in the middle for me with him. I do like Scream Bloody Gore. I'm sorry. Yeah, Scream Bloody Gore. That's a great album cover. But yeah, my first impression musically of this, I was a little bit later to this than when it came out. I didn't get it exactly when it came out. If I did, I was so involved in thrash and stuff. This is very thrashy, but I was very much more into the European thrash, a little the darker, more gravelly vocals. The cleaner singing didn't hit me until a little bit later. Of course, now, I mean, I listen to it now and it sounds like a different album than it would have when I listened to it back then. Because I listened to it, I'm just blown away. You know, I know TJ's going to have some things to say about Warrel, but his vocals on this are just searing. They're so good. He's just razor sharp, off the charts, awesome. And what he brings to this album is really, really amazing. But we will get to that. So yeah, I mean, first impressions, favorable, really good, all the way around. But let's just, Jim, do you have something for us?
Well, I haven't talked about first impressions or the cover. Or
oh shit. I'm sorry. I forgot. I usually do you first or second, and I put you at the end because you picked the record. Anyway.
This is the part where he tells us we're all on crack and that we have nothing yet.
Just be quiet, monkey.
Yeah, you're all wrong. You're all wrong. You're wrong. I don't subscribe to the perception that just because Repka has done a lot of work that he sucks.
I don't think he does. I don't like his style
these days.
I don't like his style.
Yeah, well, and also in '88 when this came out, he hadn't done that much yet. He had done Leprosy and Scream Bloody Gore and some other things, but he wasn't as ubiquitous or a household name as he is now. So, in my personal opinion, I think that it's more impactful. And I definitely think that this is one of the best things he's ever done. I love the guy kind of screaming under the evil priest dude there. And I think it's really killer. I love the gun pointing at the holy text. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot going on here that raises questions. So yeah, I think it's a great cover. Musically, you know, when I first heard this, you know, this came out in '88. This is about the same time that So Far So Good, So What came out. And I do think it's sort of like the cleanliness of the guitar. There's a little bit of, you can hear, I think that's where I hear Dave, and maybe on some of the drum production as well, how it's kind of really like there's a gated snare, there's gated toms, and it's really big in the sound. But, you know, it honestly, it was a grower for me. I liked it, but I kind of, with Dave behind it, I thought it was going to be something a lot heavier. But what was interesting about it, not being able to like really easily put it in any kind of genre tag. And let's face it, the American power metal in '88, I'd never heard that term. That wasn't what I called it. And I certainly didn't know what to call this or Metal Church. I felt like Metal Church, just like Sanctuary, was in this weird nether place where they weren't quite thrash, but they were definitely heavier than heavy metals. They weren't really speed metal. They were kind of their own thing. That's kind of where I put Sanctuary. And what's interesting is, you know, I just continued to listen to this more and more and more and more and more until like here we are, you know, 36 years later, and it's still in heavy rotation for me. Where a lot of the albums that I was spinning at the time, you know, aside from things like, you know, Death's early albums and stuff like that, haven't quite made it onto that permanent playlist like this record did. So I think the fact that this band and Metal Church, the fact that they are hard to define is part of what made them, stick with me, grow with me, and eventually, hold on to my personal taste with such a, death grip. So I guess the question, tonight, for me is, when I was reading up that Sanctuary has decided to trudge on, right? And with one guitar player, Lenny Rutledge, who was the original, he and Warrel wrote most of the songs, all the songs together on this first record. But when you have somebody that's just a force of nature, like Warrel is on this record, to me, like everything is second behind what he's doing on the mic. Does it make sense for a guitar player to like on his own shuffle up the name and try to redo it? I kind of want to know what you guys' opinions are on that, because for me, it's a little hard to stomach, because I feel like, Warrel's presence on this album, like is in every nook and cranny, and then to go further beyond that. And this is definitely a band that is a dual guitar attack. It's a full guitar sound here. To go down to one guitar player, what is you guys' opinion of like a stripping down and a remaking of a band like this 40 years later without its like predominant force, on the stage?
I'm gonna go first because I have it in my head. I've commented before on shit like this. I'll put Slayer as a prime example. When Hanneman died, everybody in the internet's calling for the end of Slayer, right? I get it, but you still have your singer intact. You still have the other part of the songwriting force of Slayer. They're still going to put out Slayer records, and Slayer, they've been active, very active for a very long time. So I was one of the people that said, why would Slayer quit? It makes no sense to me. What's Kerry King going to do? Start a new band? I mean, he had to now, but it just made no sense. Are they going to go get like regular day jobs? No. A band like Sanctuary is a little bit different for me because they put out 2 great albums. They broke up for many, 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 many years. They got back together. They put out 1 record. I've got it. It's pretty good. But it kind of stood in the shadow of Nevermore. It stands in the shadow of Nevermore. Nevermore had more product, and it was really good, more modernized take on that style. You lose a guy like Warrel Dane. If you lost your drummer or one of the guitar players, you can replace them out. It's fine. But a singer with that much identity, it's almost like he's your brand. He's the brand of the band, the face of the band. He had the iconic freaking hair. Not that means anything, but I'm just saying he's the face and front man of the band. If you listen to this album, I like it. The music is well written, but the music is very simplistic in a lot of places. The focal point is Warrel Dane, and they've had so little input since they started that it would have been they should have started over. They should have started a new band name, former members of Sanctuary. That is just as good as going out. You haven't put out much, and now you're going to put out Sanctuary. Everybody's going to critique you on what you're not. And you're not Warrel Dane fronted. And that's always going to be a problem. So if they would have thought about it a little bit more, yeah, they've got the brand, whatever, but that brand is a small, tiny footprint in the grander scheme of all the years that have passed them. So I think in this case, in Sanctuary's case, I think they should have started something new. Because now they're just going to be suffering. You're not going to find another Warrel Dane. I don't know. Kellen, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like an interesting question. I guess what I think of, Jim, is, to kind of add on to that, not just about a band reforming and releasing material when a, formative member is gone, but like, what's the tipping point? Like, how many records do you have to have with an iconic member who then, passes away or is no longer associated with the band, to the point where like either the fans are going to hold it against you for releasing new material, or potentially just be, okay, go ahead and carry on. There's enough still there. Like, I think it's an interesting question, because to Marty's example, like Slayer, there's enough catalog there. What seems to be his point is like Sanctuary doesn't have enough of a catalog to really warrant that. The one that, when you mentioned that, the most immediate example that came to mind was Crimson Glory. Because it's also happening in this time period, and Midnight was such an important member of that band. So they released a record in, 99, 2000, that doesn't feature him on it. And, while I didn't listen to that record, I think Astronomica or something like that is what it's called. I can imagine the fan base being like, there's no way you're going to be able to fill these shoes, right? Like, no matter what you put forward, I'll probably criticize it and hold it against you. So it's a good question. I don't know. I've yet to experience a band, for me personally, that like I've grown up with that has dissolved in this way. So maybe later on in, my listening, I will develop a relationship with a band where it just completely falls apart, or someone passes away or dies, and I no longer, I have to go answer this question. But for me, on a personal level, I haven't had to go through that yet. So I can imagine, though, if I'm that committed even to those early records, that I feel somewhat sympathetic, right? Like, they're not just rock stars. They're, most of the time, they're just trying to make a living or carry out their nostalgic, youth, right? Like, I sometimes feel like a bit of a dick, like just being like, it's not that 88 record. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that person. So
it's true, but it's a valid point.
I know. But it's just, I think on the other side of things, I keep on forgetting that every once in a while you get a chance to meet these people, and sometimes they're really good people. I guess I don't want to shut down that side of things. Like, is my criticism coming from a level of selfishness that feels like unfair, or how much am I weighing the balance? I think that's totally up to the individual and how connected they are to, a very early part of that band's history, and how much of the catalog, has been built with that member, that you may feel connected to. So I don't know if I've really answered your question as much as I posed additional ones. So
TJ, your thoughts?
So let's consider death in this equation here, because I think this suits that. And I've always been really conflicted about the whole Death to All, and then there's another one called Left to Die, I think, or I can't remember. There's like another one that's running around doing.
Thanks, Mike. You're too kind, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. That's doing, these tours and these shows, and it's like, what is the goal? Is it just to keep the music alive and to pay tribute and homage to Chuck's music, and with the question at hand, Sanctuary, what are we trying to achieve with this? And for me, like with the death thing, I've always been, my thing is like who, is Chuck's family going to benefit from this? Is who's reaping the rewards of this? What are we ultimately trying to achieve with Sanctuary? Because I read that today too. I was looking at some stuff, and I saw that they were gonna, put together a band, and they were gonna, the singer from Wither Soul or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And they were saying, because I guess they were getting ready to go on tour with Iced Earth and all this, and then Warrel died and whatever. And so, but anyway, so it's like, I don't, for them to soldier on, it's like, what are they really going to do? They're going to go out and do some tribute shows, and and do these things? Or are they going to try to release new music under the Sanctuary banner? Which means, it's like, is that even that band anymore? And to me, I've always felt like it's, with Slayer was one thing, Jeff dies, the band's essentially still there. I mean, Bostoff was in the band longer than
Lombardo.
Leah had been.
He's a great drummer in his own right. Is he?
Yeah,
Lombardo?
yeah. He
different style,
right.
but he's great. Great
man,
place. Good place.
Oh man, always a great drummer, and he earned his spot. He was a member of Slayer. That fine, but there was still like you say, a functioning operating unit to go out and do what they want to release new material, whatever. But like with this, it's like you pull Warrel out of the equation, and then it's like one original guy. It's like, is it really even, what are you doing at that point? And for me, it's always kind of been a conflict. I see the death stuff, I see it as a tribute, but I've always felt like, to me, I'm always just so cynical about stuff like that and people's motivations and like, what are you going to achieve from it? Where with the Sanctuary thing, it's like, maybe they just feel like, everybody got kind of, Warrel left too soon. We want to go and bring this out there. We want to bring his music, their music out, whatever. But, again, it's always, I think I'm always going to find myself in a place where I'm really conflicted about it, where, do something else, bring the music out. If you want to play the songs, pay homage and tribute, do that. But, let the legacy of what that was stand on its own, rather than trying to keep, kicking the can down the road and seeing what you can get out of it. So I'll always be a little conflicted about it, but see now with Frosty there, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that it was still Sabbath. I argue with you on that point all day.
It's a different Sabbath, but it's still Sabbath. I agree. I agree with Frosty on this one.
I don't know, man. I don't know, but the reasons why they kept the name are obvious, but it's just, again, it's what, I don't know. It was a different band. I mean, to me, I don't know. But that, again, I don't like any of those really. Any of the other eras, outside of Dio and Ozzy. So
you like Born Again? That's one of your favorite records.
Well, there's that one.
Have you given the other stuff much of a chance?
I used to have Eternal Idol. Hated it.
Headless Cross is great. Tear is really good.
I've tried listening to Tear a few times. I just can't get into it. I just can't. The whole Tony Martin thing and stuff.
Well, plus you got Glenn Hughes singing on 13th Star or whatever too. That solo project ended up being, so they've had 5 vocalists really. Anyway. Yeah. And so again, I just, for me, Black Sabbath was such a formative thing in the Ozzy eras, especially. I was a late comer to the Dio stuff, which I absolutely adore now. Back in the day though, coming up, it was not, it's like, no, Ozzy was the man, and these records are cool, but Ozzy. And now it's like, but it's different because Sabbath had a legacy behind them, and they were changing vocalists.
Right.
Sanctuary had 2 records. They came back and did a third one, which was okay. It was a good record.
And again, it's a little different. And again, like I said, I still, when it comes to something like this, especially, I'm just conflicted about it. It's like, these guys want to take Sanctuary and do this thing. What's your motivation? What are you trying to achieve? Obviously, they respect Warrel. They respect the legacy of the band, as small as it is, but it's still, I mean, obviously, the impact this record had on so many other, it's a classic, and there's no questioning that. But I just find myself in a place where I don't know how to really feel 100% about it one way or the other. I think it's like, okay, cool. I know, I mean, like the Death to All stuff and all, I won't go see that stuff. I'm not going to go see those things. I won't pay.
They're good. They got the singer they got. It sounds like Chuck.
I know. I've seen the live stuff. I've seen the videos. The stuff is sick, but I won't go. I just, I just don't, if they were, I just don't feel like, I think I don't, no, I don't need to see it. I don't want to see it. Because it's not death. It's, these guys were in death, you know, a little bit, whatever. But I just, you know, it's not to me. It's just, I don't know. You know, some people really dig that, and that's cool. But for me, so yeah, you know, I think it's a conflicting question for me personally, you know, on the issue. So I don't know. I wish them the best of luck either way.
Jim, you posed a great question. What do you think about it?
You know, and much like TJ, I'm conflicted. You know, it's Lenny and I believe the drummer as well, the original drummer. Yeah, it's Dave too. So yeah, I mean, I really don't know how I feel about it. You know, I was kind of surprised when I heard about it, and I at first I was kind of like, what, you know, but without Warrel, you know, but you know, I don't know, you know, I mean, that's really the reason why I posed it, is because I'm conflicted. Like, I don't know how to feel about it, you know, with, you know, because yeah, like Sanctuary to me is Warrel and some guys playing music behind him, you know, so that's kind of how it is. So, but yeah, you know, time will tell, but yeah, let's go and talk about the record.
I do want to say too, I mean, what do you got? I don't care for this band, but it's kind of a similar thing with Pantera, this whole Pantera tribute that's going around. I don't care, but I think if Pantera is such a humongous band, I mean, there's already talk a little bit. Rex is like, this is a band, you know, Charlie can play better than Vince.
All day.
Oh, what the fuck's the guy's name?
Vinnie Paul.
You
Yeah.
know,
all day.
I mean, God, the guitar player. What the fuck is wrong with me? Zach.
What, Dimebag?
Zach.
Oh,
no,
Zach.
I mean, Zach can play sort of like Dime, but he's not Dime. But I bet you if they put out a record, they would all have it in mind what they need to do, and it would do well. I mean, there'd be some people like, oh, this is bullshit. But I mean, you still got Phil singing. You got half the band. And the other half you can't account for because they're gone. They're dead. But I don't know. It's the same. It's another. That'd be maybe a good conversation for a wider topic.
I would answer that question if I cared about Pantera.
I don't either, but it's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Like I want to make a sincere attempt to answer that, but I'm like, I'm struggling. You know,
I feel the same way about that.
Would make a good Metallurgy Friday for y'all. You know, like everybody bring a bunch of records and talk about that.
Right. Yeah. All right. Good question, Jim. Awesome as always. Let's discuss the musicality and composition of Refuge Denied. TJ, we'll start with you since Kellen's hocking up a lung.
Well, you know, keep in mind, I didn't come up with this record like everybody else. So my critiques are coming more from now than as opposed to whatever. You know, I didn't fall in love with this record when I was a teenager. So again, I enjoy listening to this record. I think it's a really solid record. I'll put it out there now. If I find it in the wild for a good price, it'll come home with me. But you know, there was things about it. You know, his vocal performance is just absolutely. You know, Marty and I were debating this a little bit in the dugout before you guys came in, and it's like his vocal performance is without a question the shining star here. But there are times when his falsetto just gets to be a little bit too much for me in this, because he's just leaning on it. So I mean, it is without a doubt just ripping ass. I mean, he had just I mean, balls out, insane falsetto that he does on this. But you know, I'm coming from a place where Nevermore was his gig, and the way he lived in the middle ranges more, and then would drive into those places for emphasis. And so coming at this, it's like he's in it just, man, it just, you know, just endless. It's just like, holy shit, man, give me a little room, you know, come give me a little bit of range here, you know. There were places in the record where it kind of, you know, dampened my enthusiasm a little bit on certain tracks, but overall, I can't, you know, he just the vocals on I mean, his singing on this is just without a doubt just insane, and the whole thing is just it's a powerful record all over. Some of the arrangements I thought were, you know, there were a few times where some of the arrangements kind of lost me. They get into some kind of more, I don't know, the best way I could put it was a little bit theatrical, you know, the way they would kind of shift gears and stuff on some of the stuff and throw some stuff here and there. It felt a little, there were spots, you know, little places where I felt like it was kind of off and stuff, but And then there were the drums. The drummer tries to play very musically on this, which is very cool. But sometimes I think he kind of missed it a little bit. He's trying to follow the guitar lines and stuff and add emphasis, and it's cool at first. And then there's some spots where it's a little bit kind of, I think if he had just kind of followed through the beat instead of tried following it along. But I totally understood what he was trying to accomplish, and so it was really cool. But I mean, overall, the performances and the talent on this band just shine. And for being a debut, these guys are obviously, they were, hitting the marks all day. It was really cool to hear this. I had not, like I said, never heard this before and never bothered to listen to it. And so hearing it all, and then you guys talking about it in context with these others, like, oh yeah, like the Metal Church thing and stuff. So it's kind of cool. My criticisms are kind of what they are, and again, coming from my ears today versus, 100 years ago, it's just, so I'm just picking things out and whatever. But by and large, the performances and everything. And again, Warrel just, he was just Judas Priest, man. There's some shit on here where he's just screaming his guts out. And you can't really argue with it. So,
Yeah, you think of singers that clutch the invisible oranges when you hear them sing. This is the first one ever. You're like, oh, you just want to.
For sure.
He was clutching a beach ball, man.
Yeah,
yeah, and I like too. It's
he had a globe.
I like the he has to my ear, he has a Halford influence on this in his style that is just, but it's like Halford to the nth degree, and then just into the ripping highs, the ripping falsetto, and it's just like it's just cool. Like I said, there are moments when I wish you would have dialed it back some and thrown a little more range around, but I mean, it just obviously, the creator's muse, it was what he was shooting for with these tracks and with this material. I think, being a debut, obviously they wanted to come out guns blazing and just deliver the goods on all cylinders, and they do. This record does it, and it's obvious why it's such a classic. So yeah.
All right, Colin.
Take myself off of mute here. So just also I'll start with the vocal side of things. I don't have a problem with the highs here. I actually enjoy sort of how wild they are. But what stood out to me actually is, I think, whether you want to call this the personality of the front man or just an additional attribute to associate with him as a vocalist, on songs like Soldiers of Steel, to TJ's point about the theatric aspects of this record, I think he's, as a vocalist, actually a very good storyteller. Like, I think he can go into a verse and out of a verse, and to your point, like, they make these dramatic shifts in terms of pacing and his vocal personality shifts. But to me, that felt me like he was keeping me engaged in the song in the way where I was much more in tune to what he was saying vocally, like, or the lyrically, I should say. So the lyrics end up being sort of a major focus on some of these songs, just because as a sort of personality, he was guiding me through the song. And I think that's something that may be overlooked. The guitar work here, so like on the opener, Battle Angels, and then on side B for this, The Third War, I think those two tracks find them at their thrashiest on this record. Whereas you hear like on Termination Force and Soldiers of Steel and Veil of Disguise, the closer, there's a little bit more like, you would call it theatricality or American power metal. But there's the cleaner guitar works, the kind of atmosphere that comes in and out. This will be an additional note when we get to production, but one of the things that I find interesting about the songwriting on this record, and I don't think this was an intentional thing for Mustaine, because this is the only record that, to my knowledge, that he's produced. But but there's like some glooms to this, which I think works well leading into Nevermore. What you don't get is, for me, when I think of Nevermore, I think of like that groovy thrash riff that feels almost fluid. The songwriting here has a lot more sort of like, I don't want to say start and stop, but it sort of stomps, right? That's to me like the early trad stuff coming through. I hear like that instead of Halford being an influence, that's the Judas Priest to me. This sort of like mid-paced, chonky riff is a clear departure from what I was getting from Nevermore later on. Is a key feature in terms of the songwriting guitar work on this record for me. So I guess the major things there to take away are kind of Warrel's vocal personality and just how this band kind of swings between a side of American power metal that I think is relatively unexplored in 87, 88. It's sort of leaning into thrash before we get into kind of the Nevermore groove thing. And a different kind of like, I don't know, just vibe or energy. This doesn't sound like a Hellstar record or a Liege Lord record to me. Feels like a different kind of vibe to this. So that I think is an important factor that will sort of move into the dreary Seattle drunken heroin Nevermore era. So
all right, Jim.
Yeah, man, Warrel is just an absolute beast, man. You know, the reality is, you know, as feral as his vocal delivery is, he's always in key. You know what I mean? He's just doing octave after octave after octave higher than the notes that are being played. I mean, he's doing amazing work with his vocals to the point where, you know, back in the day, we're like, did he like take lessons from an opera singer or something? You know what I mean? You know, my brother at the time would scream along. He taught himself how to sing by screaming along to this record over and over and over and over. And he actually had that sort of vibrato style. And he
tell that old turd to get back into it. Damn it.
I know. He got to where he could do a lot of, not all of them, but a good bit of the high falsetto screams that Warrel does on here. You know, not with the same force, but you know, he got there, you know, and I only bring that up to say, like, you know, that was how inspiring his music was to me and my brother and my friends at the time, you know, because we just felt like, you know, there was something very special. And I love what Kellen said about storytelling. You're so right. You know what I mean? I know every word of this album, you know what I mean? You know, and you know, there was a time in like the mid 90s where it's sort of like fantastical type lyrics just sort of lost me, and I definitely was more into things that were more like introspective lyrically. But you know, when I came back around to more of that like embracing of like the more, you know, fantasy style or like, you know, future or past style lyrical content, I went back to Sanctuary and realized just like, you know, his arrangements of his lyrics were just as cool and interesting as his vocal lines themselves. Like you want to know, like, lightning congeals to kill you. Like, what a cool line. You know, the blind prophet shall breathe fire. You know, there's so many great lyrics. You know, just like, you know, you'll all fall on your knees and hail to our dawn. I mean, I fucking love this shit, dude. You know, I mean, every time I hear Battle Angels, I just want to throw something through a window. You know what I mean? I love that song. You know, it's. I mean, you know, and just on and on and on. And, you know, it's, you know, the Third War, Death Rider comes from above, you know, like there's so many great lines. It's not like they're like, you know, he's not breaking out the thesaurus here. You know what I mean? You know, these aren't like $5 words, you know, or anything like that, but it's just the way that he wrote his lyrics, like draws you in where you're paying attention. You know, they actually become like important to the album in a way that in a lot of metal, you know, the lyrics aren't so important. You know what I mean? And even though like they're very, you know, mysterious, you know, a lot of times you know, some of his lyrics are concrete in what they're saying. Some of them aren't. I actually prefer the ones that aren't, you know, because I like that there's something to sort of, you know, glean in your own mind And I can totally pick up on what you're talking about with the gloom as well, Kellen, because with that Pacific Northwest vibe, as much as anyone, that's your homeland. I feel that when you grow up in that or you're a part of that, it permeates everything you do. At least people I've listened to and met from there seems to be that. Not that they're all depressing people, but it comes out in their art. It comes out in their expression. You know what I mean? And then I feel that is definitely a part of Sanctuary. Like it's powerful, yet there is, there's no joy anywhere on this record. And I love it for that, and, we can put that aside, all that aside though. And, when you look at the riffs too, like, they're kind of like jagged, like they're straightforward and they sound traditional, but they always break in like weird parts. And there's strange little flourishes in the riffs that they twist like metal tropes just enough to make them unique and make them their own. And the way they'll, rip out of, like in Veil of Disguise, it's like really quiet. Then, will be revealed. It's like out of nowhere, you're just like, wow. I love that. And, it just like out of nowhere. I mean, you can just see the guys just like playing really well and suddenly hit the, distortion pedal, like on Sanctuary, the title track, and doing all this kind of stuff. And so, I feel like, that this is a perfect example of a band like they took years to get here. They really tweaked and took their time and really made these songs better and better and better. So by the time they finally got out their major label debut, these songs are really worked to a very, in my opinion, a very perfect line. So, guitar wise, with a familiar but angular style riffing, with a loud, just obnoxious drum, especially the toms. I love how obnoxious they are. I love the musicality and composition on this, and I love the fact that I can't really put my finger on what it is, and I think that's why, for me, it's withstood the ages, man.
Yeah, for me, I mean, well said, everybody here. I don't have much different to add to this other than the fact that they could tell what they had in Warrel's talent up front. And I listened to this album and, being a guitar player, listening to what's going on, I was a little surprised at how, at times, very simplistic. There's some weird changes here and there every once in a while, but it's simple for a reason. It gives the singer a lot of room to play. It gives him a lot of room to colorize these songs, put his own stamp on it, and make it unique. I hear Armored Saint on here. I do hear some Metal Church on here. I heard some Testament on here, which was very big for the time, especially on the song Termination Force. There's nothing really out of place or wrong on this. It just sounds all really well written. And the songs, since they have this really good foundation and the way everything goes, they build and subside, and Warrel's voice is kind of it leads you on the journey, jump scares and all. But yeah, I have no complaints on here. I think it's a very good, well-written album. I will say, I think the choice of White Rabbit is dumb. I think it's a dumb cover.
Agreed.
It should have been either at the end.
It's better than the original.
It's better than the original, but that's not saying much.
Yeah.
The source material is rough. But other than that, it's a really good record. And if they were going to put I have no problem with the band putting a cover on, but putting it in a weird place, it should have been on the end. Put it on the end. Or if you're Celtic Frost, you put it at the very beginning and then really fuck things up. But yeah, let's talk about the production. Kellen.
So I already kind of mentioned my praise for the sort of atmosphere on this record. To Jim's point, it's not a lot of gloom. The one moment on this entire album where I feel like shades of light come in is on the third track, Die for My Sins, which is probably the most sort of triumphant trad track here, but really think Warrel's performance is not compromised in any way. He's out in front, and that's to the credit of Dave and anyone else who chipped in to help produce this record or in this mastering process. The instruments, guitar work, bass, I have no complaints. The drum in particular, I mean, it's most noticeable on the snare. If way you want to call it reverb, but it's like you get the splash of the drum, not the crack of it. So like the initial impact that the snare makes, you don't hear that like snap. What you get is this sort of echoed sound.
It sounds like it was recorded in an airplane hangar.
Right. And when you mentioned, P cells, I think that's kind of where you were going with like the reverb on it. Is that sort of veiled reverb sound? And
I would say Creatures of the Night by Kiss too. I mean, it sounds humongous drum sound.
I will defer to you on all things Kiss expertise.
Sorry.
But it's all good. But that it was one thing that a couple of times when you would get the snare really isolated in the mix, it was less noticeable on the toms just because of the intonation. Like it's deeper in sort of the register, so it's not as pronounced. But where I really wanted a snare drum to ring out correctly and sort of smack, it just sort of shook, and I knew something was immediately off. So that's my biggest complaint when it comes to the production on this. But outside of that, like I'm actually surprised for someone who's not an experienced hand in this way, got behind and made a record that at least sounds pretty solid.
Well, keep in mind the verbiage. A producer isn't an engineer. The engineer is the guy that records everything. He does all he knows all the tech stuff. The producer typically helps the band organize their songs. I think you should do that verse again, or you should play that one more time, or that solo you could do better.
So I may be giving more of a credit for someone who's more
of a guiding force and a director of things than someone who actually fiddly farts around with knobs and dials.
Yeah. And TJ, your thoughts? Production.
I like it.
Oh wait. No, the musicality and composition. Did you already talk about it? I'm confused where we're at. We're on production. Okay, are we on production?
Yeah, we're on production.
Okay,
we're doing production. Yeah.
I like the damn chat. I get lost. Sorry.
No, I like the production on this. I like the classic sound of it. I like the room feel, the boominess of it. I think it suits the record. I think everything kind of. The guitars are there and Warrel's voice is. I don't really have any real gripes about it. I feel like it's a kind of a product of its time. They had some heavy hitters, pushing from behind. I did not know Mustaine was involved with any of this, so that explains some things. Which is cool. I just definitely. The guitars scream and you can hear the room they were in, and it's cool. It's a very classic vibe for the production, and so I don't really have much to gripe about it. I think it kind of adds to the charm of the record, really. So
for me, I really think the album as a whole sounds fantastic. I'm a kid of the 80s when it comes to this stuff, and my main complaint is the drums. Most of the time it fits perfectly. It all seems to congeal well. There's like, the last song, Veil of Disguise, the drums are like louder on that song than any other. So you guys notice that? They're like way boomier, and then it gets louder and weirder at the 421 mark. But it just sounds to me like Creatures of the Night, the airplane hangar tone mixed with Megadeth P Cells, which came out a year before this. And I wouldn't think much about the P Cells drum sound if I didn't hear the debut album, Killing Is My Business. I love the drum production on that. I know they went in with a very low budget. They hate the sound of it, but you can hear the kit sounds organic. It sounds real. You can hear Gar's amazing. listen to Killing Is My Business and tell me that Gar isn't raging on that record. He is just a beast of a drummer. So you want to go into the next album hearing that again, but they put so much reverb on the drums. It kind of took away some of that impact for me. That kind of happens here, but thankfully, you know, Sanctuary isn't as fast as Megadeth. They have moments where they go a little bit quicker, like on Battle Angels and the Third War. But the boomy drum sound here works. It's just really weird. Sometimes it bugs me, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, I love the guitar sound. I like where Warrel's vocals sit in the mix. And most of the time, the drums feel right. It's just when I sit and think about it, it's like, oh man, those are really loud. Why is that so loud? Why is it so boomy? But yeah, I think it's a great production. I mean, it's top of the line, big money production. You can tell it sounds like a late 80s era major label production, and it works for this album. Favorite, least favorite songs? Kellen.
You never let me do production, dude.
Oh shit, dude. I'm sorry. Damn it.
You're on a roll tonight, brother.
I am like not with it. I got other things on my mind. I'm sorry. Sorry. I usually go first with you, and I figure when I get to this point, I've already done you. Sorry. Production, Jim.
All right. I definitely, you know, I think the mix is perfectly done on this. I can hear everything really well. The bass cuts through, you know, especially on the higher notes, which is, you know, an achievement for a late 80s album in metal. That wasn't distorted. You know, I mean, that was a kind of a rarity. It's hard to hear a lot of bass during albums, for a lot of albums during that time, unless you had the mid range all the way up. But you know, the guitar sound is super clean, as I talked about earlier. They do some scales here and there, and they're always like really clean. You can hear them. You know, it's not muddy at all. I really like the lead sound. There's like a lot of delay on the leads and stuff, but it's not to hide anything, which a lot of times delay is used to hide. I'll admit it in my own guitar playing, hide some lack of ability. Not on this though. I think it really adds to like the really dreary sound this album has. Yes, it's fast and it's not fast. I mean, but it's quick and it's intense and it's high energy, especially with the vocals. But there is still like a dreary aspect to it. It's kind of hard to nail down. And I think that, the use of delay on all the leads here really amplifies that. And as far as the drums, the song actually came out in 88. It was the same year as So Far So Good So What. And so the drums to me sound a lot like So Far So Good So What, which, in my opinion, the worst Megadeth album. Really only one good song on that. I noticed that when I first got this record, even way back then. Drums, for both of these albums, it was a very processed kind of a sound, a lot of gated reverb. It was, maybe a little much on the processed drum sound, but oddly, and enough, like I really think in the context of everything else being done right, it sort of sits right. I like the boominess of the record, and I love Creatures of the Night by Kiss. I think
Rules
Out is one of my favorite songs
yeah.
by them. So it actually works for me. I don't know if I'd honestly say the same thing if the album came out today, but in the context of the era and in the context of how good everything else is EQ'd in the studio here, it works for me. It makes sense. And I actually, even though it's almost like crazy how loud the toms can be sometimes on this record, I think it really adds to it, especially in Veil Disguise at the end of the album, and on Sanctuary, the title track. So for me, I think it's a perfect production for its time.
And while I got you up, Jim, so I don't skip you again, let's do favorite, least favorite song. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no. So
get this right.
This was probably the most difficult album for me to choose a favorite song out of anything we've ever done, because I love this album so much. I literally always put stars by my favorite songs when we talk about records, and I literally have a star by every song except for White Rabbit, which I still like, and Termination Force, which I still love. I still love all those songs. In fact, my like in my hometown there was 2 bands, and I was in one, and my brother was in 2. And in the second band that he was in, they actually played Sanctuary's version of White Rabbit. They covered it, and so that cover means a lot to me. Like I think it's really awesome, and I always loved it. I actually heard Sanctuary's cover before I ever heard Jefferson Airplane. When I heard the original, I was like, oh, it sounds kind of weak. But yeah, so I really like White Rabbit, and yeah, like I said, I've been literally jamming on it for ages. But yeah, so how to choose? But I will say, obviously, Battle Angels, man, it's just a crushing song. I mean, it comes out, and then and what I love about it is like Warrel, he steps you into what he's about to bring you. Like, he comes out really quiet in the verse at first, you know what I mean? And then the bridge,
the chorus is like
a little bit louder, He that weighs have sealed that. And then it comes and you're like, holy shit, and it just goes and goes. And, I mean, it's so awesome, So Battle Angels, it's just absolutely, and I still get goosebumps when I hear that song. I still want to freak out when I hear that song. I just absolutely love it. Soldiers of Steel, man, it's just a powerful song. Any song that even metaphorically like references metal, like I just love that. We are the Soldiers of Steel. Like you're goddamn right we are. You know what I mean? So those. And like I said, it's really difficult to narrow this down, but I'm doing it for space of time. So, and man, Veil of Disguise, man, I love this closer. Just everything about this song. It's epic. It builds. It's epic. It's crushing, and then it's intense. And then the last couple lines that Warrel says, as I see the sun rise on these ancient sands, my immortal gift lies dying in your hands. I mean, I just love that, dude. I mean, it doesn't get any more metal than that, dude. I mean, it's just power. You know what I mean? So, yeah, if you're an idiot and you only want to listen to 3 songs, I would choose those 3. But if you're smart, you'll listen to the whole album over and over.
I think that's as close as I've ever got to see the Steel Vortex in action. Like I bet we were at like so close to level it was about to be unveiled there.
Yep. All right,
so
Kellen. Favorite, least favorite.
Here. So I'm going to be on my crack pipe again. I don't like White Rabbit. But
I don't hate it, but I could live without it on the album.
It's just it's unnecessary, and like
it's a B-side. It's a B-side. It should have been on a single on a B-side.
Like if there's a band that's going to cover it, there's 1,000 other bands who could have done it worse for sure. I just didn't need it. But favorite songs. So Die for My Sins, I think is for me like it personifies this band's intersection of American power metal and sort of like an odd, gentle introduction to thrash. That it's such a catchy song. I think it's the best. That the main riff on that is the best on this record. I really like sort of the epic. This band. Another thing that we would, to your point, Marty, about like they kind of knew what they had and had with Warrel, and I think Jim made the point that like they had sort of practiced and sort of figured out their sound. I really enjoy some of the longer tracks on this record. So like Soldiers of Steel and Veil of Disguise, when they are sort of pushing that 6-minute barrier, I think they do that really well. And for a debut record, I'm always impressed when a band can sort of manage longer song structures, and they find that on this record. To me, as much as Battle Angels like kicks this record off, I'm always happy to arrive with the Third War towards the end. That I feel like that's one of the faster, more aggressive tracks on the entire record, and I really enjoyed listening to that. So there's a lot of good stuff to go through and enjoy on this. The clear miss for me is the cover, which I almost should feel like doesn't count. So I won't hold it against them.
TJ.
Yeah, I Die for My Sins, Sanctuary, the Third War. Third War's really got, that's kind of, they hit the thrash button on that one a little bit. I think those songs are all really strong. Overall, I like, my least faves, they're more like, I think the songs are all still really good. There's just where the arrangements get weird, and then I fall off a little bit. Like White Rabbit, that song, it's a really well executed cover by a talented bunch of dudes. But there is just, I don't think it really, I think it kind of fails to execute all the way through.
I just don't like the song.
Well, that of all the songs, I mean, I feel like for the band, I think I can understand why they chose it, because it offers a lot of opportunity for them to be complex doing that song, and it's definitely, it fits, I think, arrangement wise with everything else that's going on, but it just, it's just kind of meh. It's got some really cool moments. The lead work in it's all really cool.
Dave, I guess Dave Mustaine plays the first.
Apparently, yeah, and it's really well executed in that regard. But I'm with you, Marty. This would have been a really cool kind of EP thing for them to have put out or something. That would have been really cool. I just look at
covers differently when they're in that type of realm. I don't know what it is.
Well, I will say, I think one of the greatest cover songs I've ever heard was done by Nevermore, Sound of Silence. The first time I heard that, I was listening to the record. I didn't even realize what
they made it a Nevermore song.
Oh my God. That is just like one of the most, they own that song front to back. And when I'm listening to it, and I'm like, God, this is a really cool song. And then all of a sudden I kind of caught a whiff of what it was. I'm like, what is, oh my God. And it's just absolutely stunning rendition. Just so cool. But anyway, yeah, the cover, and then I didn't really care for Termination Force, because I felt like it was a little soon in the record for the soft parts in it. I mean, they move out of it and stuff, but I just was like, already, and but then they bring that softer side in quite a bit in some of these tracks too. So I guess it's not necessarily, it just seems a little sudden in the overall track listings. And then and then Veil of Disguise, I just wasn't really feeling Warrel's vocal performance on that track. It's got moments, but I just didn't. I don't hate it. Again, these are just kind of nitpicks, little things. Like overall, I think all the songs are really good, and there's just little things about it that I didn't. That just kind of missed me here and there, but for the sake of the conversation, those are kind of my picks. So,
all right. I got everybody right. It's going to me now. Okay, here we go. For me, Battle Angels, I mean, you put your best foot forward, right? And love the searing vocals. Jim's completely right. It's a slow build, and when he hits that chorus, it's just like, oh my God, give me all the oranges. I'll hold them all, So great. I love the solo work on it. Best vocal performance ever? Question mark on my notes. Maybe it's crazy. Termination Force. I do like the song. It starts off like a Testament song, kind of ballady with the clean guitar lines, dark vocals underneath it. And the track opens up and delivers with sharp riff work and nice moments of speed. Great song. Other favorite, Third War. I love it when this material picks up the tempo. When they go faster on this record, they're not really a thrash band, but it has thrash vibes to it. It just, Faster Sanctuary feels extra aggressive. With Warrel's high register over the top, it makes it feel even more intense and essential. Sanctuary I wrote down with no star or check mark. It's got valid ballad vibes to it. The thing that sells that song for me is the song does it gets heavy eventually, but Warrel is just gut wrenching on this song, man. He's just off the charts crazy on this song. It's great. Totally sells an otherwise okay song. Third War we did. Veil of Disguise. That is kind of like a sleeper cell type of song for me. It takes it to about 4 minutes and 21 seconds before the song starts to pick up steam. Because when it starts off, I'm thinking, man, you're not ending with a blast. Come on, hit me in the jaw on this song. Close this album with a, Battle Angels Electric Boogaloo. I don't know. But it takes a minute for the song to build up, but Jim mentioned it being very epic, and it is for sure. It has a speedy ending. It feels like they cranked up the volume in the mastering or something. The drums seem unusually loud on this song. But for the first half of the song, Warrel is kind of focusing on more of his middle range, which makes it feel a bit more like a Nevermore song. The only song on here it isn't Sanctuary. It's their fault for picking it, but White Rabbit, I said, come on. At least it isn't Eleanor Rigby. I'm looking at you, Realm. The band Realm on their Endless War album that came out the same year as this one, 1988. They covered the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby, and it is atrocious. It is, God damn it. I wish I could have been a band manager. I'm like, no, veto, no. But, it's still an interesting cover of a song that I just don't care about, They did a good job on it. It's a ballsy move, taking something, complete 70s anthem, drug anthem, and turning it into, at the time, a modern metal kind of hybrid. I don't know. But yeah, let's get into Judgment. Final thoughts. Jim, we'll start with you.
Well, obviously it's my pick, and what I'm about to say is no surprise. I mean, I talked about how it's still in rotation for me, and has been for decades. This is one of the few records where I really enjoy listening to it front and back. And it had a huge impact on me. Musically as a guitar player. Definitely a huge impact on my brother as a vocalist who I played in bands with for years and years and years. So, this album for me, it's an absolute 10 out of 10. It's a Desert Island album for me. I love that I can't, really describe what it is. American power metal, thrash, it's both. It's neither, it's trad metal. It's all these things. It's just, the best elements of all of them, rolled up into one and ends up with it's something very unique, and it stands the test of time. It's absolute pure metal, and when these guys, tell you that we are the soldiers of steel, they mean it. They mean that they are, and they mean that you are. And for me, this is a perfect heavy metal album.
Kellen.
Yeah, so if I saw it out in the wild, I would absolutely pick it up. So in that sense, a complete success. I was thinking, though, this to me is a great, what do you want to call it? A keep or reap record. Like if I had to choose between the first Sanctuary record or Liege Lord Master Control, like what would I go? They both come out.
I have never heard Master Control. I know.
Okay.
I have burned to my touch.
But it's I guess it's as much as like I'm really into the American power metal world. I think it's one of the last great sort of flashpoints in the genre's history. And that's as a piece of study and like a jumping off point. I wish there was more in their catalog, but I'm happy that Jim picked it this week, and it's a killer record.
It's fun.
Yeah.
100%. TJ.
Yeah. I give it it's like a 7.5 for me. I'll like I said, if I come across this out record shop, and I'll bring it home. It's cool. my nitpicks notwithstanding, it's I'm glad I got to listen to this finally. I had a reason to listen to it, and it's definitely it's a classic killer. It's I definitely understand, definitely see why the record holds the place it does for Jim and lots of other fans. So it's definitely cool. Can't really, not much more I can say about it. It's like
Yeah. And for me, I struggle with the grading. I'm going to probably, I was going to say A-, but I think realistically for me, it's a B+ album. It's a great record. 100%. The cover knocks it a bit, a couple things here and there, super nitpicky shit, but a B+ album, I think I feel very comfortable with. It's a classic. I think it has aged remarkably well for me. Cause like I said, I didn't get this right when it came out, but I got it a year or two afterwards and, or heard it a year or two afterwards and eventually bought it somewhere, some record show or something for $4. And it's in great shape too. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, yeah, I mean, it's just good to put this on. Listening to it this week, it does put me in mind of metal. It makes me want to listen to Metal Church, which my kid is starting to get into. So psyched about that. I played him The Dark the other day, and he's like, "This kind of rules." I'm like, "I know, it rules, totally rules." But yeah, I have nothing really to say other than this is an amazing album. I've listened to this album and Into the Mirror Black more than I've listened to Nevermore. I do like Nevermore. I have 2 or 3 of their albums. We did a big dive on the channel of them with Jeff from Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. A great catalog. But there's something about this first album. And even to those that have not heard Into the Mirror Black, it's a really good record. It's just way proggier. It's got a bit of a proggier vibe. And really, it's just, Nevermore, I think, kind of needed to happen. It's like the spiritual successor to Sanctuary. I think 3 original members of Sanctuary went on to form Nevermore. So it's just a more modern take on where Sanctuary could have went. So, I mean, really, Nevermore could have been it could have been Sanctuary. I don't know why they changed the name. It's weird. But unless maybe the guy that came up with the name wasn't in the band anymore. I don't know. But yeah, B+ album for me all day. It's a classic. It's really, really good. Yeah. And guess what, everybody? I pick next week. We've all determined. And do you like Bolt Thrower? You should. I know, Jim, you like Bolt Thrower. TJ, I know you like Bolt Thrower. Y'all like Bolt Thrower. Well, you want to hear where Bolt Thrower came from?
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh.
Nice.
Within the Prophecy, Sacrilege, fellow British band. Tam, her vocals, it's kind of strange hearing a lady scream on this stuff. There's a crust punk element to it. It blows me. When I bought this, I had this on tape when it came out. I bought it because it was on Metal Blade. And I didn't quite get, when I bought the tape when it came out, I didn't get it. But it's like one of those things you put it on now, you're like, it's the guitar tone, the way they're playing, it sounds a lot like Bolt Thrower. And Bolt Thrower is admitted to being very influenced by this band. So yeah, Sacrilege's second album, Within the Prophecy. This came out in 1987. And
it's gonna be a good week. I'm gonna enjoy listening to this over and over.
Yeah. Do you have this, Jim?
Yeah.
Right on. I didn't know if you did or not. TJ, do you have this?
No, I do not.
Kellen? You're muted.
I do not.
Well, this is a late addition to my massive list, which is getting out of hand here. And all the stuff I had originally for this show is still haven't touched. I keep coming up with these new ideas. I figured this would be a good discussion. So
yeah, it'll be
I
fun.
do the same thing.
Yep. But yeah, that's it. Does anybody have anything to add before we jump?
I got nothing.
No, you should stick to the A-, Marty. You're wrong about B+.
It could all. If I'm being overly critical, it's a B+. But it's great. It's great. Yeah, exactly. Chris. Carl Willett's band, Memoriam, has 2 dudes from Sacrilege in the band. Right on.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
I didn't realize that either.
Right on. Okay.
Nice.
Well, Kellen, you got anything coming up?
I will have a new Killing for Company episode, hopefully edited this weekend. So by the time we return to talk about Sacrilege next week, that'll be up. If you're reviewing, I submitted a review to Marty he should have got the email for the latest Critical Defiance release.
Okay.
The Search Won't Fall. So that'll be coming your way on the Heavy Metallurgy channel here soon enough.
Monday, for sure. Jim, you got anything going on?
I have a question for everybody in the chat and comments and our team too. Like, can someone give me a 2024 death metal album that's not on $20 spin and it isn't the ones I already have? Spectral Voice, a 2024 death metal album that's awesome. Like, I need some new death metal, and I just been trying to listen to a bunch of stuff and I haven't heard it. Somebody give me something to buy that's that good. Come on, hit me up.
So think about it, people in the chat, and or people watching this, put it in the comments section below of some Morbid Crank ideas to listen to. Ooh, yeah,
Brodequin's the second one I got, David.
Yeah.
I already have it. That is awesome. I can't stop listening to that one.
Right on.
That's going to be on my year-end list, actually.
Well, as far as this show is concerned, Friday show notes. Bill from the Ninth Circle is going to be rejoining us, and we're going to be doing a simple What's Spinning. We haven't done a What's Spinning episode in a while, so we're going to be doing that. Should be fun. And yeah, that's it. And we'll have
the Glorious Dead will be in Marquette, Michigan on Saturday, playing at Cognition Brewery.
Cognition Brewery in Marquette.
1034 North 3rd Street, Marquette, Michigan. So book your flights now.
We're gonna try not to stink up the place, but it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So there's that.
But cool, everybody, have a great one. It's been a lot of fun as always, and we will see you Friday. This group will see you guys on Wednesday. So cheers. Take care.